Hey, what's up, Nashville? Bo Beach here with the Free Speech podcast. On today's show, we're going to catch you up on current events for Nashville commercial real estate, Nashville business, and then we're going to finish out today's show with a interesting conversation about politics, perhaps one that you haven't heard before. I'm going to kind of riff on some of the ideas that I've had regarding how we're really going to settle the massive divide that we have in this country and how we're going to right the ship in this country before we go bankrupt, right? And I'm going to propose a solution, perhaps, that you haven't heard before. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about another professional services firm moving out of downtown and into Germantown, right? So this is a big trend happening in Nashville right now, whereby you've got businesses moving out of the downtown core into Germantown, into Midtown, into Music Row, even into Williamson County. There's been a very, very noticeable shift of professional services businesses moving out of the downtown core. We're going to talk about that. Then we'll talk about a Los Angeles-based restaurant, a famous West Hollywood restaurant coming to Nashville, big $5.4 million construction plan in place to bring Craig's to Nashville. We'll talk about that. Next, we'll talk about the Morris building and how that is slated to become a hotel, why that building is historically significant, kind of the story of that building and how it got to a place where it was sold to a private investor who now plans a hotel there. I'll tell you all about that deal. Next, we're going to talk about a downtown car dealership that just expanded its site with a $258 per square foot for the land purchase and how that stacks up compared to the price they paid for the adjacent property. And we'll work into a bigger conversation about why the optimal buyer of a piece of commercial real estate is often the neighboring property owners. They're usually the ones that value it the most, therefore will pay you the most for that property. That's exactly what happened in this deal. I'll break that down for you. Next, the Bank of England cuts interest rates by a quarter point, right? So there is now a worldwide theme in lowering interest rates, finally bringing some relief to the common man. We're going to talk about what's going on in England, what's going on in the European Union, and what's going on in Canada and what that might mean for the upcoming rate cuts in this country. And lastly, we're going to talk about what I'm calling Redxit, right? So kind of a play on the word Brexit, where England left the European Union. I'm going to suggest to you one of the best possible solutions to the current divide in our country is the red states banding together and leaving our current union of 50 states. I'm calling it Redxit, which is not very easy to say and probably isn't going to catch on, but I thought it was kind of fun and witty. So that's at least what we're calling it for today. So let's get started. A top 50 accounting firm is leaving its Sobro high-rise for Germantown. Frazier and Dieter has signed a 29,000 square foot lease in the Neuhoff district, a mixed-use development on East Germantown's riverfront. The firm is leaving its current office in the 222 2nd Avenue building in Sobro, where it's been operating out of a 8,000 square foot space since 2018. So they're going from 8,000 square feet to 29,000 square feet, which is kind of unheard of. Atlanta-based development firm New City Properties is charting the redevelopment of the Neuhoff meatpacking plant. Jim Irwin, who leads New City Properties, is also responsible for the development of Atlanta's Ponce City Market, one of the largest and most significant historical adaptive reuse projects in the nation. Irwin paid $32 million for the Germantown complex in 2020 and is nearing completion on the $550 million first phase of its redevelopment, which will include nearly 1 million square feet of office space, retail space, in addition to hundreds of apartment units. The renovation of Neuhoff's historic structures began in 2019. The accounting firm is joining the growing roster of office tenants leaving the downtown area for neighboring submarkets like Midtown, Germantown, and Music Row. Law firm Butler Snow recently announced it was leaving the Pinnacle at Symphony Place Tower and moving to Neuhoff. And Regions revealed in April its plan to relocate its downtown headquarters to Music Row's Roundabout Plaza office building. This is a trend that has legs. Professional services businesses are no longer willing to put up with the congestion and the lack of access and the challenging parking and the craziness that accompanies downtown Nashville. They're moving further out. They want simplicity and easier in and out, less distractions, an environment that's more conducive to the work that they do. It makes perfect sense to me. I don't understand why anyone would want to drive from their home in the suburbs all the way to the downtown core, fight traffic, fight parking, fight homeless people, fight drunk people, have all of the sound and chaos around you, only to sit down at your desk and then get to work. I think the work from home revolution is really changing how employers are going to locate their office space. They need to make it easy and enjoyable and low cost for their employees if they want them to be in the office more often. I don't think there is a real draw to the downtown core for office users right now. I don't see what the benefit of it is. In fact, I think there's going to be a continued trend out of these big cities in general and locating in some of these suburbs like Franklin, like Brentwood, whereby you're closer to your employees. It's much, much easier to get there. Your commutes are much shorter. It's a much easier pitch to get those employees in the office if it's an enjoyable process to actually get to the office. If you're driving all the way downtown into the heart of the action just to sit at your desk and work and leave at the end of the day, none of those surroundings really benefit you. And you don't really get the prestige that you once would. Years and years ago, the address in which you were located was meaningful. It said something about your business. I don't think that's necessarily true anymore. I don't think you'd really attach credibility to where a business chooses to locate anymore. So all of the reasons that one would like to occupy space in the downtown core, they've kind of faded away, and now they've actually become negatives, right? So I think this is a trend that is going to continue. The downtown core is going to be much more about entertainment and tourism and civic things and conventions and less about office space. That's my prediction. Obviously, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, but I do think you're going to see office users relocate outside of the downtown core more and more and more as time goes on. Let's move to number 2. This will be a short and sweet one. The Los Angeles-based Craig's coming to Nashville. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. It is a big name brand in Los Angeles. A Hollywood favorite restaurant is coming to Nashville. Craig's, founded in 2011, so it's really not one of these businesses that's been around forever. It just kind of caught fire there. Has landed a $5.4 million permit for its Nashville expansion at 611 9th Avenue South. So they're signing a lease. As a condition of that lease, there's going to be $5.4 million of construction associated with it. This property is last home to the restaurant named Chef and I. Craig's plans to add 4,231 square feet on a second floor, right? So there's an existing 4,194 square foot single story building that they're going to more than double the size of by adding a second floor. The scope of work includes a new commercial kitchen, new restrooms and parking, and renovation of the existing buildings. Craig's is located in West Hollywood at 8826 Melrose Avenue. It's known for its upscale American dishes. The menu offers salads, shareables ranging from $18 to $26, pizzas around $26, pastas, chicken, seafood, and meat dishes ranging from $27 all the way up to $73. So, upscale American food, not going to be inexpensive, going to bring a Los Angeles vibe, a Hollywood vibe to Nashville. I'm not sure I would bet on this use being successful. As far as I can tell, the folks in Nashville aren't real receptive to anything California, and even less receptive to anything Hollywood, right? So just because something works in Hollywood doesn't mean it works in Nashville, Tennessee. And to invest $5.4 million on the front end before you even sell a single salad, I've always said, very, very risky thing to do. The restaurant business is very, very challenging. And to be in the hole $5.4 million before you even get opened, and of course the number will be far beyond that once you've got all the equipment in place, you've got all your payroll in place, you've got all your upfront expenses. You're going to be digging yourself out of a probably $6-7 million hole, one salad at a time, for a concept that I'm not sure makes a whole lot of sense in Nashville. But I could be wrong on this one. We'll see what happens. I won't be there. That's not a place for me. I'm going to pass on old Hollywood Craig's. Not for me. Let's keep moving. The Morris Building to become a hotel, an effort to reinvent downtown's 100-year-old Morris Memorial Building with a hotel and speakeasy-esque bar with decor to pay tribute to the structure's Black American history. On Edge Hospitality seeks a 128-room boutique hotel with a roughly 7,000 square foot bar called a speakeasy because it's located in the basement. The buyer paid $10 million for this 5-story building in late 2023. The building was once eyed for purchase by Metro government for use as a civil rights museum. It is billed as the only building in downtown Nashville originally associated with the city's historic Black business district. David Ewing, a local historian, stated, "The Morris Memorial Building is one of my favorite buildings in the city. It is the Black Ryman Auditorium, offering great architecture and incredible history." So we've got a local historian likening this office building that's dilapidated in need of reinvention to the Ryman Auditorium, which seems like a stretch, but I don't have a horse in this race. Ewing said the section of downtown is not activated in the evening. A hotel will bring locals and tourists to the area, which currently is used for state and metro offices and parking garages. So you've got a 100-year-old office building in an undesirable location downtown that's going to be converted to a boutique hotel, which is hopefully going to transform that little submarket right there. I think this is a good use of this property. I think it has the potential to transform that little pocket downtown. And I think it's a much better use letting a private investor change that building into something that the market wants, rather than looking at a government entity to change it into yet another museum which I'm sure would never cover its own costs. It would have to be subsidized by the taxpayer. When you use a private developer who is bringing a product to the market that the market desires, not only does it not cost the taxpayer money, It creates tax revenue to offset the government overspending elsewhere. So the Morris Building to become a boutique hotel instead of a government-owned civil rights museum, I think that is the right outcome. Let's keep moving. This is a discussion about why one always needs to think through who the highest and best buyer is for a piece of commercial property. And if you're going to sell a property for its underlying land value, meaning that the building that exists today will not be repurposed, it's going to be raised. Whoever buys this property is going to buy it for the land that it sits on for redevelopment, right? If you've got that type of property, and we've got all kinds of property like that in Nashville, we've got a lot of dilapidated property that has the structures have no value. Those properties are going to be sold for their underlying land value. Anytime you're in that situation, you must immediately think, hey, I need to try to sell this property to the neighbor, right? Because the neighbor may have a use for this property, and the neighbor is more likely to overpay me for it relative to someone on the open market would. And that's exactly what happened here in downtown's Audi car dealership, which expanded its site with a recent purchase, paying $258 per square foot for that site, which is a much higher price than they paid for their original location, right? So they buy a location for the Audi dealership in Sobro. They pay one price for that. They later buy the adjacent property, paying a much higher price than they paid for their original property. So let's take a look at this. Let's also discuss one of the larger businesses in the area, right? One of the largest automotive retailers in the country snatched up another Sobro site. Sonic Automotive paid $5.75 million for a 0.51 acre downtown property, which neighbors its recently opened Audi dealerships. We're talking about just a half of an acre with a building on it that has no value for $5.75 million. This is the type of money that's being paid for well-located land in Nashville right now. Sonic Automotive is the 5th largest car retailer in the U.S. It opened its Audi downtown location last year. The seller paid $950,000 for the recently sold site in 2008. Again, the seller paid $950,000 in 2008 and just sold it to the Audi dealership for $5.75 million. Locally, Sonic runs Mercedes-Benz of Nashville, BMW of Nashville, Porsche of Nashville, Audi Nashville, Audi Downtown Nashville, and Crest Honda. In 2020, the auto dealer paid $6.6 million for its original Audi location, which is 0.94 acres, which is equivalent to about $161 per square foot. So they get into Sobro for the Audi dealership at $161 a square foot. They then expand it on the adjacent site, paying $258 per square foot. That is the power of selling a land site to an existing business who has a use for it. So 161 going in, 258 per square foot to expand it. That is the reason, if you're selling a property for its land value, start with all the adjacent landowners. If they have a use for it, they generally are going to pay you more for that property than the open market will. That wraps up our discussion of Nashville commercial real estate. Now we're going to zoom out a little bit. We're going to talk about our current interest rate environment and what's happening with interest rates right now. We're all very, very eager to get an interest rate cut, right? Certainly someone like me, who is a commercial real estate broker, it would be very, very helpful for me if rates started to tick back down, not necessarily for the savings in interest that one pays, but it's more psychological. We've got a real pause in our marketplace right now. Everyone is scared to death that a Democrat is going to win the federal presidency, right? And continue to wreak havoc on our economy, right? So we've got so many folks kind of scared and in a pause that we really need some momentum, some positive momentum. And where would we get that from? We would get that from an interest rate cut that says, hey, we're going to start trending lower on interest rates. It's time to get back to work again. Let's take a look at this scenario from the perspective of what's going on in other countries, right? The Bank of England cuts its rate by a quarter point. The Bank of England has cut its base rate to 5% from its 16-year high of 5.25%. That's how high interest rates have been, y'all. Why do you think everything is so expensive? Why do you think the commercial real estate market has slowed to the extent that it has? We've been at very, very high interest rates relative to the most recent past. It is the first drop in the interest rate since March 2020 and will be seen as a key to shifting sentiment and unlocking a muted real estate transactional market. I think I just said that, right? So the decision was by no means a foregone conclusion with a 5-4 vote between committee members. So 5 members voted to cut the rate, 4 voted to hold it the same. 1 vote difference, they cut the rate. The bank's decision follows a general trend among central banks in Western economies to move towards rate cuts. The European Central Bank reduced rates in June, but has not committed to any further moves. After a first interest rate cut in June, the Bank of Canada now, right, last week lowered its key overnight rate by 25 basis points or a quarter point to 4.5%. Yesterday, the United States Federal Reserve said it could start lowering interest rates in September, but vowed to hold borrowing costs at a 23-year high. So Bank of England coming off a 16-year high, the United States going to be coming off a 23-year high in interest rates. The market has been lacking momentum, a sign of investor confidence, notably through a lack of large commercial deals. True. We need some momentum to get through our current pause in our real estate market. I'm talking about commercial real estate. I'm not talking about residential real estate. I'm not in that business. I'm talking about real estate bought to be occupied by businesses, real estate bought to be developed, or real estate bought as an investment, right? That is the type of real estate that has really stalled out in 2024. The slump in investment volumes and refinancing challenges seen in the commercial real estate sector over the past 2 years and depressed property company share prices can all be traced back to the rising rate backdrop. While valuations look to be stabilizing, further cuts will be required if we are going to see a narrowing of the buyer and seller pricing disconnect that has paralyzed the market. Again, they say paralyzed, I say paused, right? This decision will have a limited impact on mortgage rates, but it will be transformative for sentiment. Again, that is what I said, right? It is a mental thing, a psychological thing where we've just had all of this economic, just a terrible economic span of time where people have been holding on and trying to keep things going as much as they possibly can. And now they're just fearful that the fools that run our country are going to make it even worse, right? We need something to tip the momentum back to our side, and a lowered interest rate is going to be the easiest, most simple way to do that. So we're very, very hopeful in the U.S. that we get it together and start lowering interest rates in a responsible way as well. Of course, we would have avoided all of this had our federal government not been printing money to the extent that they had over the Biden presidency. Even in the face of growing inflation, rising inflation, they gaslighted us and said inflation is not a problem. We've got to pass these multi-trillion-dollar bills or the Democrats won't have any policies to run on, right? So they kept passing policies paid by borrowed and printed money, thereby increasing the inflation in this country to an extent that they really couldn't cool it off. And after all of that, right, they said, hey, if we don't spend more money, we don't have any policies to run on in 2024. And now we're in 2024 and they don't even mention all of the money they spent. They don't mention any of those so-called transformative investments because they are so unpopular. So all of that money wasted, all of our qualities of life down, so they would have something to run on in 2024, and now they're not even running on it. Now it's just all about, this is my race, this is my sex. If you have the same race and sex as me, you got to vote for me. That's where we've gotten in this ridiculous situation. While a lot of attention appears to have been focused on the first cut, more crucial is where interest rates will be in 12 to 18 months' time. I'm hopeful in 18 months' time, we're going to be in about the 5.5% interest rate range. And I think we can navigate that. I think we can work with that. So the world has begun cutting interest rates. The United States has at least given the appearance that an interest rate is coming in September. That would be helpful, but really what we need is for the market to understand there will be multiple interest rates coming over time and some expectation of when that's going to happen. That will unlock our paused commercial real estate market, get business flowing again, and benefit us all as a society. The sooner we can get to that, the better. The challenge is we're going to start lowering interest rates again while government spending is still ramping up, right? So they're still spending more and more money, flooding the money supply while we're lowering interest rates, which is a bad situation. You know, if we could have just kept interest rates marginally low while also cutting government spending, we wouldn't have been in this mess. But there's absolutely no political will to cut government spending, which is absolutely going to be the downfall of our once great country. The USA, the United States of America, will one day fail because of government overspending. It is a matter of time. And I'll tell you, Canada is going to go first. Canada is even worse shape than we are, believe it or not. And that seems like a very, very hopeless situation, just like it seems very hopeless in the United States. Both Canada and the United States are sinking ships. So let's talk about how we might get off that sinking ship before it goes all the way submerged, right? With our final topic of today, Redxit, right? A red state exit. So I'm going to present to you something I've been thinking about, right? I haven't read this anywhere. I'm not stealing this idea from anywhere. I'm not proposing this is being worked on behind the scenes. I'm simply suggesting it is a useful thought experiment, especially if somehow the Democrats pull off the upset in the 2024 federal election and civil war pops off as a response. And civil war can be defined a lot of different ways, y'all. I don't think it's going to be two armies meeting in a field shooting each other, right? I think it's going to be much scarier and much more chaotic than that. If Donald Trump gets beat in 2024, there is a high probability that we're going to at least see pockets of civil war in this country. So get some cash, put it in your safe, get a gun with plenty of ammunition, be ready for that. Be responsible, especially if you've got a wife and children to protect, men. You need to be taking actions to prepare for what is a high probability event in November. Now, imagine if we get to this place where we say, you know what, this country is too divided. I don't want anything to do with the liberal policies that are being pushed down our throat. I don't want anything to do with the mismanagement of our money supply. I don't want anything to do with our cratering economic situation in this country, all of the unfunded liabilities, all of the borrowing that we have no ability to pay back, all of the mess that our federal government has gotten us into. what if the best solution is not to ride that sinking ship all the way to the bottom of the ocean, but is to be practical and responsible, and for the red states to form an alliance and get off that sinking ship? So what I'd like to do is present to you what I believe would be step one of leaving the current 50-state union. And I would call this the Red State Economic Alliance, whereby the governors of red states, right, led by the great state of Texas, the great state of Florida, and the great state of Tennessee, along with other red states, would form an economic alliance which would incentivize business between red states, right? And how would you do that? You would offer reduced regulation for red state to red state business, not just the state themselves, but the location of businesses, right? So if I've got a business in Tennessee and you've got a business in Texas and we want to do business together, there's going to be a mechanism for reduced regulation, expedited approvals, tax breaks, and we're also going to incentivize corporate relocations from blue states, right? So we're going to create an economic environment that allows the red states to prosper regardless of the damage that's being done at the federal level. In addition, we're going to tax businesses operating from blue states, right? We're going to tariff their products from blue states, right? So if you're operating out of a blue state and you want to sell your products in a red state, we're going to slap a tariff on those like we would do foreign countries. We're going to tax those blue state businesses if they want to do business in red states. We're going to take the funds from all of those taxes and tariffs. We're going to invest them, perhaps in Bitcoin would be a smart idea, but we're going to invest them as an alliance, let that money build. So when the day comes and the federal government threatens us with withholding federal funding for anything that they're subsidizing in any of our states, we're going to say, no problem. We're self-sufficient now and we can draw on those investments, right? We're ultimately going to have to get to a place where we can be a functioning society as a group of red states without any involvement by the federal government or any type of financial subsidies from the federal government. We've got to start working towards that. This is already in motion to a certain extent. A great example is the Texas Stock Exchange in Dallas, right? We're trying to create a stock exchange for publicly traded shares of companies in Dallas to become a rival institution to what's historically been located in New York City. This already exists in Dallas. And I would also argue that the capital of the Red State Alliance would be located in Dallas. I think that would be the perfect place for a Red State Alliance capital as well. The whole idea is we would intentionally limit all of the red state exposure to the federal government, their regulations, their rules, their spending, their taxes, anything we can do to insulate ourselves from the damage that the federal government can do to us as a red state alliance, we should start working on it right away. And I think we start this under the guise of a red state economic alliance, whereby red states do business with red states. We're still going to accept business from blue states, but you're going to pay a little bit more. You're not going to get the treatment that red state to red state businesses get. We're going to take all of those funds. We're going to invest them in Bitcoin, perhaps, and we're going to use those funds for when the day comes and all the federal funding dries up, so we can be a self-sufficient society with a capital in Dallas, Texas. That's my idea. That's Redxit, which every time I say it, I cringe a little bit. I'm going to have to come up with something better than that. But Red State Exit, Redxit. Something for you to think about. I suspect, the truth of the matter is most Americans aren't thinking a whole lot about this stuff. The average American isn't real bright, which you can tell by how people have been voting recently. They don't see the big picture. They don't see that there is a cost or damage being caused by spending money that we don't have. They don't see the unintended consequences of their emotional decision making. Most people aren't going to be talking about this, but the people that have their finger on the pulse, the people that own businesses, the people that have already relocated from blue states to red states, this is an idea that is really going to catch on. The worse the federal government gets, the more likely that we're going to start strategically aligning ourselves as red states, preparing for an eventual exit from the 50-state union that is known as the United States of America. Something I think about a lot. I think it would be a very, very wise thing to be proactive and be prepared to get off this sinking ship before it's too late. Otherwise, they're going to take us all down with them. And there's no reason that we should just sit on our hands and take it. The real men and women of this country need to grow a pair and need to start fighting back, need to start insulating themselves from what's coming next. It's going to get worse before it gets better, y'all. So prepare yourself. Have cash on hand, have plenty of supplies, have guns and ammunition. There is a high probability of at least pockets of civil war following the upcoming presidential election. I will be very shocked if it doesn't happen. And I think it's going to move us in a direction where we're going to say, you know what? We've just become too different. The things that you value, I don't value. We become polar opposites of one another. And at some point, we have to try to stop forcing our ideas on one another. And we just have to agree to separate and do our own things. I think we are closer to that reality than we've ever been, certainly in my lifetime. And I think, at least for the red states, that would be an absolute beautiful opportunity to really go on an economic run. And we'll let the blue states fend for themselves. They can have the dollar. They can have the debt. They can have all the unfunded liabilities. They can have all of their social programs that are tearing down the fabric of society. They can be government subsidized single people with no children, and they can live whatever life they want to live without us being triggered because we're no longer involved. We no longer have to pay their bills. We no longer have to let the federal government steal money from us every year. We no longer have to play along. Let them lay in the bed that they made themselves, and we'll worry about ourselves. And I really think that would be a terrible thing for the blue states and a great thing for the red states. I really do. I'm hopeful that the Ron DeSantis's of the world, the Greg Abbotts of the world, the real thought leaders in the Republican Party, primarily at the governor level, are really going to start thinking this through strategically and get the ball rolling. I think it's in our best interest. I think it would be one of the smarter things we ever did to position ourselves for success in the future when clearly the ship is sinking and there is no solution in sight to the giant divide in this country. So perhaps we acknowledge the divide and sort each other out, and we each do our own thing, unburdened by what has been. Okay? Ridiculous. We're going to end it on that. Thanks so much, y'all. Please tune in again next week. We'll talk to you then.